So, hi, my name is Josie. I work upstairs in Center for Ideas. I'm a sophomore and my pronouns are she, her. Today we're doing I See Voices, Activism is Our Legacy, and today we have Taz Wright.
Hi.
So Taz is a queer, non-binary, Black, first-generation American. They prefer the gender-neutral pronouns they, them, and theirs. Taz was born and raised in Long Island, New York, but their heart resides in Trinidad and Tobago, where both of their parents grew up. They identify most deeply with the calling of the artist and activist. Taz's embodiment of the energy evoked by these words is radically reflective and fluid beyond binary ways of being. As an artist-activist, Taz chooses to be intentional about the things they create, whether it be stick-and-poke tattoos, paintings, poems, or interpersonal relationships. All of their work is rooted in collective healing and the power of art to revolutionize community perspectives. Their professional goals parallel their personal goals of happiness and liberation, and this is evident in their self-designed major entitled Resistance in Gendered Blackness. This program of study validates experiential knowledge, curates avenues of liberation through decolonizing perspectives of religion and spirituality, and uses the arts as a call to action, all while centering queer trans people of the African diaspora.
Yay.
So excited.
Solid.
Awesome. So let's get started. So what is your definition of a student activist?
Yeah, I would say, for the student becomes irrelevant for a little bit. So I'm gonna start with the activist part. And I feel like I was actually just at a talk that was through the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life, and the presenter's name is escaping my head right now. Thank you, Yavila McCoy. She came out and she gave us such gold nuggets, and one of these things is her definition of activism has to do with upholding and bringing out and reclaiming our deepest humanity in ourselves and in others. So I feel like an activist at its core is someone who does that, upholds feelings of care and true compassion for self and others, on a moment-to-moment basis. And then I think also an activist is someone who does that as intentionally as possible. I'm not the type to say that an activist is always going to be politically correct or always going to be perfect, but someone who is being careful about checking in with themselves to make sure that their actions are aligning with their values and who they want, the change that they want to be in the world. So I think a student activist is simply someone who is an activist who is also a student. And I'm very intentional about breaking down our notions of what a student is. And student doesn't only have to be someone who's in academia, but was said about my major, it's really about experiential knowledge and validating that as valuable as well as a valuable source of knowledge. So I feel like a student activist is someone who's a student of life, and if you are in academia, someone who knows how to strategically use the resources that are in the school that we have at hand for others as well.
Awesome,
Yeah.
that was beautiful.
Thank you.
So, what is your history with activism, and why did you get involved with this specific movement?
Yeah, honestly, I always used to, I'm such a sensitive person, and I've been told that growing up all my life, mostly by my father, I'm oversensitive, and I need to grow thicker skin. And I realized that my sensitivity and my passion could either be my poison or my power, and also that coupled with just being exposed to the realities of this world so young, with a lot of conversations, candid conversations that I would have with my dad, I realized that I could make a choice. I could either be just helpless and hurting all of my life because such traumatic things are constantly happening, or I could take my passion and my sensitivity and use that as fuel to do something about the things that dehumanize me and don't make me feel good. So I chose the latter, to actively heal and to bring people along that journey with me. Yeah.
Perfect. So going back into the beginning part of the answer. So how does your identity play into your activism?
Yeah. So when I was kind of like reflecting on this question personally, like in my journal, I kind of just wrote down all of these labels that I have, and I wrote it, and you probably can't see it, but I like wrote it in a way that it's not like my identities are not linear. They are not listable. Like there's no value hierarchy. Like I am Black and I'm queer and I'm American and I'm Trinidadian and I'm dark skinned. Like, and I'm an Orisha practitioner and I'm non-binary, and the only sequence that those have is literally just in the natural sequence of language. But other than that, like they overlap, and I embody all of these very deeply and at the same time. So I would definitely say that my Blackness and my queerness informs my activism the most, because everything else is pretty much attached to that. And how I go about upholding those aspects of my identity really has to do with moving from an emphasis on anti-colonialism to like decolonizing. And these are conversations that I've been having with my friend. Shout out to Daniela Rivero. She like always picks my mind, and like I want to be able to exist outside of these constructs of what I'm supposed to look like, and I don't want my existence to be informed by that in terms of like, oh, I'm doing this because I don't want to be that. Like I don't want colonial structures to be in my mind when I'm just trying to exist. So I feel like a lot of my approach to activism based and centered in Blackness and queerness like has to do with innovation and resilience and creation and love and individuality and the collective, and like how they go hand in hand. So yeah, very holistic. Yeah,
I love that. Okay. So taking all of that together, what are some projects that you are and were involved in?
Yeah, projects. Well, the first one that comes to mind, because it's the most salient being here at IC, is my major, which I did create. It's called Resistance and Gendered Blackness, and I feel like that's an ongoing project of really just how do I bring myself and my personal identity into academia. And how do I interrupt these spaces and demand that I belong for myself? So I would definitely say that is something that like I'm constantly thinking about, constantly feeling as I move through this world. And it really just kind of set this foundation for declaring my agency and this energy of knowing that I am investing in this institution, so it is okay, and I should demand what I should get from this institution. I am paying to be here. I go through shit being here, like, so the least you can do is like give me the education that I deserve. And then I feel like some other projects that I am involved in. One of my favorites has to be Freed and Fetishized, which is a summer scholars project that I've been working on for over a year, right, at this point in time. It really has to do, Freed and Fetishized is a documentary that upholds the healing of Black femmes, and I use the word femme to be inclusive of genderqueer and non-binary transgender individuals, and I pretty much just put the energy out there. Like, this is the placeholder word that I'm using. If you feel called to lend your knowledge and your experience to that in any way, then yeah, cool, come in. So femme doesn't look anyway. But Freed and Fetishized is really like a for us, by us project, and back to like upholding and validating experiential knowledge, like really I want the documentary to be used in like schools, in like cultural centers, any place of learning, and I wanted to show that like storytelling is a valid means of resistance, and that it's necessary. It's a necessary part of revolution. Record keeping is a necessary part of the revolution, and more specifically, what it's about is being intentional with our language and understanding that fetishization and hypersexualization that Black femmes experience today is directly connected to dehumanization that our enslaved ancestors experienced, and that though the impacts of these things are deeply felt and they're intergenerational, and it is up to us if we want to end those generational curses. So I call it a documentary, but it's also very artful and distorts time and spatiality as linear, and that's something that really I'm about. I would also say another project that I worked on that was pretty fun and like really rewarding was a project called Sister Joy. And me and a couple of other community members had gotten engaged Cornell grant to do this art collective surrounding the theme Haunted by Joy. So the project was like a mentorship and collaboration project, and we really wanted to fuse these ideas of soft and hard skills. So the people involved in Sister Joy were creating the art that was going to be in the art exhibition, and also a part of the curation process of like how to actually put together an art exhibition, and like securing location and all the logistics that go behind it, and showing that like the artist can also be a part of that process, and that there is no value hierarchy in being part of the creation or part of the curation of it, and that was really beautiful. I remember we had gotten so many art supplies for these high schoolers, and just like giving them all these art supplies that they requested and telling them that they get to keep them, and seeing them like almost crying. I'm about to cry too just thinking about it, because they were so grateful, and it was just those are the moments that I really live for and that keep me going. It's really about the interpersonal connections, and that really goes back to upholding our humanity. Like, I think like when we get so involved in activism and social justice work, sometimes it gets hard to not conceptualize things and to not theorize things, and sometimes we forget that we're really doing it because we're trying to be in community with people and make sure that people are being treated like people. So those moments are really impactful for me. And I would say the last one that has been on my radar has been organizing around the incident of racist police brutality that happened on the Commons in last April. And I served kind of as like this untitled community liaison between IC and the coalition of the Multicultural Resource Center, Black Lives Matter, Ithaca, and Showing Up for Racial Justice, and like making sure that Ithaca College students were aware of what was going on in our broader community, and using like our privilege to support these Black and queer people who were harassed and then charged for their harassment. So those are some things that I have been involved in as of lately. Yeah.
That is awesome. I'm blown away by how much you do. So with all of your projects and everything, who do you hope to reach with everything that you do?
Though honestly, you say that, and I just got a flash of my younger self. Like, I've been doing a lot of healing work around loving my inner child and my younger self, and I just I just like think about, I'm sorry, I'm getting like a little bit emotional. I just think about that little dark-skinned black girl with her doo-doo braids and like wanting to have straight white girl hair and like remember like these experiences of like I gotta tell this story because the bully in my head, I named him the bully in my head after this actual person who was in my like second grade class. He's gonna go unsaid, but this white boy, he was like the boy. Everybody wanted to be with him. We're like however old we are when we're in second grade, and he puts us on a list, like a rank of who's his first girlfriend, second, whatever. And I remember being girlfriend number 8, and I was the only black girl on that list. And being in second grade, like, you notice things like that, but you don't necessarily have the language to process that. But these are things that I definitely remember, and definitely impact me to the point that, like, the bully in my head is named after this kid that ranked me number 8. So I would say like a lot of my work and the activism I do is really wanting to uplift that child, that little Aaliyah, who would get made fun of for like when like my Trinidadian accent will slip out, or if my syntax is wrong, or because I don't use proper grammar, or I pronounce oven like oven instead of oven, or whatever it may be, and just feeling like not allowed to just literally exist. So like I really do what I do so that we could just be happy and not have to be in such like fight or flight mode all the time, in such like survival mode all the time. I really want to help people move from survival to like living and thriving and freedom dreaming of what that looks like. Because that little Aaliyah could have never fathomed that like this Taz would be here right now, like ever, like ever. So yeah, I do it for all of our inner children. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so moving.
Yeah.
So moving tracks a little bit, but thank you so much for that. That was so great. How would you recommend college students get involved in activism in general, as well as your branch and all?
Right. I honestly would say, one, humble yourself, but don't humiliate yourself. Always uphold your power. However, always be in a space of like wanting to learn, and don't think that just because you've taken like 400th level classes and like anti-colonization or whatever, that like you know everything, because like there are people who have never stepped foot in like a higher education institution and who have so much wisdom. So I would say first and foremost, don't let that the prestige and the privilege of being a college student like get in the way of your growth. I would also say like connect with the broader community. It's intentional that both Ithaca College and Cornell campus are on hills, and I would say we think about like going out and like expanding into the Ithaca community, and I feel like I feel like I have at first like a perception of what that community looks like. But when I say connect to the broader community, I also want to add connect to the community that you resonate with. Like, there are people like you out in Ithaca's community. Like, black people are here. There's not as much black people as there are white people, but they're here, so we can go and connect and make those connections. And I also would say that and also while holding that, yes, we do go to a higher education institution and we have access to certain resources that others may not have. Like, make sure that you're making your knowledge accessible and your learning accessible. Like, what is it to hold knowledge if you're just gonna hold it and not share it? So I feel like that's the least we could do. And I also think like that really something like designing my major has made this easier for me, but I feel like it's something that we should all try to do, of making as many things as you can, projects, essays, whatever they may be, like as relatable to your passions as possible, or at least try to make it matter to what you want to learn about and what you value. And with that being said, I feel like there's this, as a college student, there's this like really unhealthy narrative that everything, like all of our classes matter, all of our assignments matter, and like it doesn't. Like literally, I want you to prioritize and ask yourself, is this essay gonna matter in 2 weeks? Is this essay gonna matter in 2 months? Is this whole class gonna matter in 2 years, in 5 years? Probably not. So that's something that I've been working a lot this year, is doing what I gotta do to like get a good grade, and also diving into the studies that I actually care about. I don't have to give all of myself to all of my classes, and that's okay. Like that's part of prioritizing. So I would say, yeah, prioritize, humble yourself, and make your learning accessible is like the 3 main things. Yeah.
Thank you, that's really wonderful. I know that I need to do that. So for people who don't identify with your activism and they want to get involved as allies, how would you suggest that they would do that?
Right. Okay, well first, I prefer the term co-conspirator over ally, because I feel like it's more of a call to action, feels more active. Ally feels very passive to me. So I would say one of the biggest things, I have listen written big in my journal with like a cloud around it. Like, listen. As a co-conspirator, listen. And also a part of that listening is knowing that, like, not claiming knowledge or not claiming titles. Like, a co-conspirator, you're not a co-conspirator by telling me that you're a co-conspirator. You're a co-conspirator by doing that, like by using your privilege and using your identities strategically so that we could build each other up. I don't need a savior. Like, I could do it, but it's cool if you're down to help. And that goes back to listening. Listen to the people that you're in community with and the marginalized peoples that you're helping for guidance on where you fit. And I also want to say, more specifically, I'm talking now like about queerness and blackness, or let's go with queerness for like pronouns. Pronouns matter. Using people's chosen names matter. Pronouns are not whatever. And I've heard even queer people say like, oh, you could just, it's whatever. It's not whatever. Like, even if you personally identify with any of the pronouns, okay, say, yeah, I use any of the pronouns. But I feel like sometimes it's unintentional and it's unconscious, but it's kind of trivializing to those who really want to be called by whatever said pronoun, and they're not optional, and you also do not have to understand them to respect me. Like, just do it. And also understanding that you will if you're new to using like non-binary pronouns, you're gonna mess up, and even if you're not new to it, you're still gonna mess up. You don't need to make a whole big show about it. Like, it's cool, it's a slip up, correct yourself, keep it pushing kind of thing. So going back to co-conspirator, like, Be a co-conspirator even when there's nothing in it for you. Be a co-conspirator when there's no clout for you. Be a co-conspirator when it doesn't build your ego. Be a co-conspirator when there is no public perception at hand of you that will be heightened or maybe broken down because you did or didn't do something. So it really, I guess what I'm saying is like, a co-conspirator, you shouldn't be in it for yourself. And that kind of back to pronouns and how that links to that is correct others even when like someone who may not, even if you're in a space with only cisgender people, someone's referring to some trans person and they're not in that space and they're using their wrong pronouns, correct them. That's fine. There's nothing at stake for you, but that's still what you should do. So I would definitely say, as it goes to like the queer community, please use our pronouns, please use our chosen names, and I want to get a little deeper too as it goes to white people in the queer community. There is such a culture of like white queer people feeling that because they are queer, they have access and rights to Black culture, and specifically Black queer culture. And yeah, just because you're queer, that doesn't mean you're Black. So you're still a part of the problem if you feel like you have such a hold in that culture. So yeah, just being intentional and being careful with the space that you take up. And also, just in general, for any co-conspirator to any type of group, like, check your pride and your fragility. Like, shame and guilt does not get anyone anywhere. Like, shame is not a part of the healing process. So, if you did something and someone calls you in or calls you out even, own it and do better next time, and also know that there will be a next time where you'll probably make a mistake and then do better the next time. And I want to say also that like co-conspirators, the interpersonal relationships that are cultivated are just as important as whatever political activism that you may be a part of. Like, an act of co-conspiracy could be like giving someone a hug if something bad is happening in their community. Like, hey, like, I'm aware that this is something that you may be going through, and I know that I personally cannot fully relate to that, but like, I just want you to know that you are seen and that I am here for you, and I'm offering you whatever type of emotional or spiritual or mental support that you may need. Like, that is also part of the work of a co-conspirator. Going back to the humanity, and it's really about the interpersonal connections. Also want to say, because I do identify mostly as an artist activist, so support independent artists, like repost our work. If you can't buy or financially support us, share it. Also, money is cool too, so if you can't afford to support us, give us your coin, because we put a lot of work into our work. So yeah, support artists. Art is a big part of revolution. Creation is a part of resistance. So yeah, I think that's what I gotta say on that.
That was great, thank you. So going back to yourself, like more personally, how do you balance work, your personal life, and your activism?
Right. Okay, so I put spirit and I also put ritual. So spiritual. But something that a post that I saw on Instagram that kind of blew my mind the other day. She was talking. She's a Black woman. Her name is Alafia. She's an Orisha devotee, a hoodoo practitioner. She was saying how you can't be spiritual if you don't have a ritual. Like, that's part of it. So I know for me and a lot of like my also astrological placements, I love routines and I love the rituals. That's how I thrive. So definitely my rituals around spirit and around connecting to my ancestors and connecting to the land and nature is what keeps me grounded enough and centered enough to be able to do the activism and the social justice work that I do. So like, every morning I pray, every morning I give gratitude for the things that I have, whether it's like waking up or like, hey, I'm like really grateful for this lipstick that I got that like makes my lips popping, or like whatever it may be, like just showing gratitude. Every morning I dance, every morning I stretch and I do yoga. And I feel like starting off my days like that in a centered place and a mindful place really makes a huge difference for me. And in general, I would say like trust. I have a lot of trust in my ancestors, and I have a lot of trust in the universe and the flow of things. So that has a lot to do with like my personal practice and just knowing that there's nothing that I'm experiencing that my ancestors haven't experienced, and their strength, they were able to endure and triumph over whatever hardships they experienced, so that means that I can too. And also holding that I am an ancestor currently as we're speaking, and one day when I am no longer in this physical realm, like one of my great grandchildren are going to be calling upon my name for guidance. So I really like move through this world as with holding that I want to be like a blueprint for future generations, and I want them to build. I want them to be better than me. And also another thing that I feel is really good for my overall wellness is unplugging from like social media and technology. It's good. I think everyone should do that. Just taking those moments of like being outside of spectatorship and being outside of like this desire to constantly share ourselves or constantly be a part of something when we're not actually a part of it, because really it's only confined to this little black portal. And I'm a big believer that like these things are like, they're energetic black holes. Like, I'm so serious. Like, I've been like watching how like my cat engages with my phone. Yeah, they know. Animals know. They don't fuck with this. Like, they really don't. Like, they don't. And I take that as a lesson, because I also uphold that animals and plants have a lot more knowledge and wisdom than I do. So the fact that I would be trying to take a picture of my cat and she's like, no, like looking everywhere else but the camera, or like my dog does that too, I'm just like, yeah, I don't need to be on this for 5 hours of the day. And I kind of touched upon it, but nature as well. Nature, we have so much to learn from Mother. We have so much, and she holds us so well. Like, we constantly disrespect her and destroy her, and she holds us so well. If you like just take the moment to make yourself in tune with that vibration, like, you will receive lessons. I believe that everybody has like intuitive and like medium like abilities, and like it's just that we're reared in a society that those quickly go away, or we lose touch of them because we don't practice or engage with them. And I feel like taking moments to be out in nature really helps us to like reconnect with those parts of ourselves. Also in terms of like balancing like schoolwork and activism and like my personal life, I really rest when I need to rest. I'm a big, there's like a page on Instagram the NAP ministry, and one of their things that I've read on there is like, rest for your ancestors, rest for those who weren't allowed to rest, or even rest for the people now who can't rest, whose living situations and experiences are so demanding that they can't rest because they have to put all of their energy into surviving, into taking care of themselves and their family. I rest for those people too. Rest is productive. You can't do anything unless you feel yourself, and rest is part of that. And I was listening to a podcast that I love. It's called a Little Juju Podcast, and she tells you every single time this podcast is about black ass spirituality. Black? Did I say black? Black. Like every time, like black ass spirituality. And one of the things that she was talking about is that the black community, we kind of have this notion that if we didn't put blood, sweat, and tears into it and we get something, then we don't deserve it. And it's just like, no, hell yeah, we deserve it. One, we're like, our ancestors have, because of chattel slavery, like, were put in conditions that they toiled and toiled and toiled and never received the compensation for their work. So at this point in time, in terms of like universal karma, I am owed. So if the universe blesses me with something, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna be grateful, and I'm not going to invalidate myself because I didn't earn it. And that's something that has come up for me personally, like even with like dynamics with my father, who is a black man. He immigrated here from Trinidad, like his early 20s, and he worked his way up like from nothing, like, and that has come this notion of like not being worthy of things if it didn't come hard, like, has really impacted me personally. I've been doing a lot of intentional healing around healing my relationship with money and finances, and healing my relationship with work and rest and all of those things. So I think that's one of the main things that I'm currently focusing on, and that allows me and enables me to be grounded and centered, knowing that I am worthy. I'm worthy. Just me being born into this world makes me worthy of my needs being met. It's just that simple. Because I am a human, I deserve for my needs to be met. I don't need to do anything else for it to have the basic necessities of life. And it's capitalism that tells us otherwise. So, yeah. Also, I am a big believer in not only the wisdom of plants and animals, but also the wisdom of like really young people and really old people, because there's both like in time, in stages of their lives where like they're so still very in touch with like the spiritual realm, like newborns. What? Like, they're crazy. Like, they're actually, like, miraculous and, like, magnificent. And I can't remember what society it is, but there's, like, a tribe in Africa that, like, it is standard practice for the grandparents to be raising the like newborns mostly, like not the parents, because it's understood that both of these people are highly connected to spirit at this time in life, and it allows for like a more direct transmission and like reciprocal relationship of like knowledge being shared. And I think that's really beautiful. So I think also a part of how I balance all of these demands in my life is like spending time with people that I know have experienced more than me. So I really love like talking to my elders. That is innately a part of my my faith. Like, I can't be praying and being in touch with my ancestors and then simultaneously be neglecting my living ancestors. That wouldn't make sense. So, yeah. Yeah.
Those are really great. So how do you see activism playing a part in your future beyond Ithaca and just in general?
Yeah, I honestly don't do anything. Like, my professional goals naturally align with my personal goals, and my personal goal is really happiness and liberation. So I see myself in the future doing a lot of things. I do not want to pigeonhole myself. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but some things on my radar right now is being like a holistic midwife for queer people of color, and like just traveling and supporting birthing peoples through that beautiful process of like bringing a new being into this world. I also just want to travel as much as possible. Traveling is so important, and I also acknowledge that I have a lot of privilege around my mobility as like a U.S. citizen, that allows me to travel with a lot of privilege. So if you can travel, definitely travel for sure. Like, me and Danny were in Cuba in January, and that literally changed my life. It was so transformative and so invigorating, and also opened my eyes to nothing that I didn't know in terms of how much information could be skewed, but like, it was being in Cuba, this place that the US historically demonizes for several reasons, and like seeing for firsthand their way of life and their resilience and innovation, and also just like this like really deeply felt like love and community across the whole country was so amazing. And it really made me realize, like, wow, if you don't actively seek this knowledge, it is very, very easy to fall victim to these narratives that are really hurtful and oftentimes like straight up not true. So really want to travel a lot and continue to break out of these boxes that I have been placed in and continue to explore. I also love reading for those same reasons, so I want to open like a chain of like Afrocentric community libraries and like low-income neighborhoods, and I want those spaces to I want them to be not like your traditional library. Like, I want them to be like lively and colorful, in a place that people want to go and spend hours in, and like have like different vibes and different themes and different rooms, and so definitely another thing I want to do. I want to be a world-renowned artist. Like, I started writing my novel like a couple of weeks ago, and writing this novel has been in my mind for years at this point. I think one of the first things I said that I wanted to be when I was young was an author. So it's been a beautiful process of coming back to that, and I knew a lot of the themes that I wanted to cover, but I didn't know how I was going to go about telling the story. And a couple of weeks ago, I was like sitting at my altar, and Spirit just gave it to me. And I have been like unstoppable ever since. And I want to raise this world's vibration with my art, whether it's like written or visual. I want to be a Reiki master, an all-around healer. I want to be the medicine woman that lives on the hill. I want to be a professor. Like, I really don't want to box myself with anything. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna end up doing, but it's probably gonna be a conglomeration of all of those things, just anything radical and anything grassroots. Yeah. I also actually no, that's going into the next question. Legacy. Is it a college legacy? Tied to all of that, like, I want to be known as the person, like, well, one, legacy, it's interesting because my relationship to this word, I'm still trying to figure out what that actually means to me, because, like, I don't want legacy to be attached to my ego. I want it to be something that is more of a blueprint for others to build on. That's kind of how I'm approaching legacy. So I want to be the person that, like, just, like, is real and, like, authentic. I want to be known as the person who came into this space and, like, interrupted it for the good. I want to lay build on foundations that have already been in place, and give my own energy of, like, just being healing and uplifting. And I know I have been embodying that. Like, I have several people that just come up to me, like, randomly, or if I'm, like, passing them, just tell me, like, oh, you're just such a light, and every single time I see you, it just makes me feel good. And I love that. I really do. So I want to continue to be that, and I also want to be a connector. Like, I do this naturally. I have a pretty broad community, but I feel like we're all connected in these ways of, like, activism and healing and artistry. So a lot of the times, like, I would have a friend in, like, this circle who's doing this really dope thing, and then another friend in this circle who's doing this really dope thing, and then, like, oh, y'all should definitely know each other and, like, collaborate. I want to be a connector in that way, and I want to really emphasize the need for collaboration. Like, we really don't need to all be on our soapboxes at once. Like, we should be getting off our soapbox to go listen to somebody else and seeing what they're about, and, like, seeing what's already in place and how we can build. Because sometimes we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I feel like more specifically with the legacy that I'm trying to leave at IC, is through this project that I am doing with Geraldo Soto, who is the director of Religious and Spiritual Life, and hopefully this program will be funded through the President's Fellowship that I applied to. And I'm doing a lot of manifesting around getting it, and I think I am, period. And I say, this project is called Seekers, and it really has to do with giving queer and trans people of color the tools that we need to heal ourselves individually, and also to declare our belonging in places that we're told that we don't belong. This person, her name, can't remember her name, Prentice Hemphill, I want to say, something like that. She was the first healing justice director for Black Lives Matter, and she was talking on this podcast called Healing Justice, which is also a really good podcast, about how we often look at belonging as something that is outwardly given. Like, you tell me if I belong in this space, or the environment lets me know if I belong. And she was, like, really turning that on its head and saying, like, no, like, belonging is something that is, like, individually declared. So with this project Seekers, I don't want it to be confined by any space. I don't want it to be embodied by any one person. I want it to be a space that is ethereal, and a space that we all carry with us when we're going to, like, that racist class, and we're just like, okay, like, now I have these, like, set tools where I feel grounded enough to be able to preserve my humanity and engage in ways that protects my energy and also shuts people down and lets them know, like, what's up real quick, but, like, not overexerting yourself, and also being comfortable in declaring and demanding belonging. yeah, I feel like Seekers will be a big part of my legacy and what freedom dreaming looks like in the context of Ithaca College. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. It's coming.
That is so exciting. I'm so looking forward to that. So for the final part, so what is your call to action out of all of this for Ithaca College students?
Right. Honestly, I feel like communication is like really important, and being clear and transparent with communication. I feel language is really important because language like affects how we think about things, and how we think about things affects how we act on them. So with that being said, I guess my call to action is challenging yourself to say what you mean and mean what you say, and be confident in that. And something about confidence that I learned from somebody who has been a very interesting but very impactful person in my life. They used to break down words a lot. They taught me like confidence, what does that mean? So confide. If I am confiding in everyone, I cannot be confident because too many people know all of me. In order to be confident, I need to hold pieces of me for myself. And so I guess with language and saying what you mean and meaning what you say, also letting that be centered in confidence and knowing what to say to who and what to say where and what should not be said and what you should just hold. Like, it's okay to you to only know that one thing about yourself or whatever that may be, and that will enable you to walk through this world more confidently. I also want to say, if you hear any one thing out of all the things I've said, is do not fall for the mirage that we do not have power. We have power. We have all the power. We only give up our power when we think that we don't have it. And like, honestly, it's kind of cliche, but cliches aren't cliches because they're not true. They're cliches because they're true. And they're very applicable a lot of the times, but literally anything is possible. You have to imagine it first. So don't box yourself in with your imagination. Befriend your imagination. Explore your imagination. And I also want to say collaborate with each other and support each other. A lot of work can get done when we are doing it in a team. I was at this coalition meeting with BLMI, MRC, and Surge around organizing for Rose and Kaji, and someone said, like, no one person could hold out a note forever, but a choir can, because when you're singing, I'm breathing and I'm breaking, and when you need to breathe, I'm singing, and nobody has to know who's singing when or what, but to the outside, it's one continual note, and that is what movement is. Like, it's continual. So don't let the moment eclipse the movement. Yes, it's okay to celebrate when we've accomplished something or when something has been won, but like, revolution is continuous. There is no end point. There's always something to be done, and that can be daunting. So that's why you also have to celebrate and hold your wins too, but also don't let that prevent you from future wins. And I also want to say, to build while we destroy. I feel like sometimes we get into this space as activists of like just wanting to tear down everything. And sometimes things, just like need to be teared down and we need to start from the beginning. But also, while we're destroying and burning down the place, we also need to be rebuilding what we just burned down. And like, that's just as important. Like, don't just decimate things. Like, what are you contributing to the community? Like, what are you going to do to replace it? And don't, like I said, like, don't be imaginative with what can replace the former structure. Something as wild to like USians is that we can't have free healthcare, but Cuba's doing it. They're doing it fine. They're doing it very well. Like, so like things like that. Like, really anything can be done. And a more specific call to action is that right now there is, back to like how language matters, there is a I don't know what the word is, like a group that is in the process of reforming IC's diversity statement, and they are having feedback sessions. And also, if you can't attend the feedback sessions, which is on Tuesdays and this Tuesday and Thursday coming up, in the noon hour, and then also from 5 to 6 on both days, they have like an online survey that you could give your feedback to this new diversity statement that they have drafted. And I think that things like that are really important to be involved in, because this is the mission statement of the college. So like when something happens, they're going to be checking that, like, okay, well, how do we approach this, resolving this said issue according to what we have established as our values. So being a part of establishing and naming what we need specifically around diversity and inclusion, and being intentional and holding the institution accountable is a very good first step. So yes, be a part of that process. Be a part of that process. I have looked at it and it needs work. So yeah, do that. And yeah, I think that's my call to action.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was all like incredible. I learned so much. I know that everybody else learned so much.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? We'd like to open the floor up for questions now. Okay.
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to comment and say thank you. Like, you spoke about a lot of different things, but I think it was very interesting to like, listen to what you just say and kind of reflect on like kind of like myself and kind of like how I've been like living and like how I like my outlook on different things. So I really appreciate that, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I want to say, like, I really am a reflection of all of y'all in this space. Like, I think one of the biggest problems that, and we talk about this all the time, I know, Chevy, you could probably testify, like, as an MLK scholar, like, the detriment and the downfall of deifying our heroes, like MLK, and MLK was a person, just like how you are and how I am, and he did these things, and also he did them not by himself. So one, when we deify the people that we look up to, we're taking away from our own strength and our own power, and we're forgetting that, like, I too can do the same thing that person did, and even more. So I just want to say, like, I very do much appreciate your thanks and like y'all expressing your thanks for what I have shared, but I also want to uphold and value your existence and like acknowledge that like I am you and you are me, so we're like in it together. So we're like reflections of each other. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. We're good. Okay.
Well, thank you guys all so much for coming, and Taz, thank you so much for speaking. That really did, like, I know that you just said like hold back on the things, so that really means so much to me, like all of that.
I'm happy.
And yeah, thank you so much, and thank you guys all for coming. This
Thank
was awesome.
you. Thank y'all. Yay!